Let's catch up with what Reform have been doing, because you will have seen Nigel Farage, who is the honorary president of Reform, at a campaign event. We're going to talk to Lee Anderson. He's been on a political journey, to say the least. Former coal miner who worked for a Labour MP, then stood and won Ashfield in Nottinghamshire in 2019 as a Conservative. In March, he defected, becoming the only MP for the Reform Party. Welcome to you, Lee Anderson. We've asked all candidates, or rather all MPs, as they are still, of parties when they first appear on this programme, to give a sort of 30-second pitch on behalf of the party. What would yours be on behalf of Reform?
Well, first of all, I didn't defect to the Reform Party. I was kicked out of the Tory Party and then joined the Reform Party as an independent MP at the time.
Noted.
But I think Nigel's been quite clear this morning on what Reform's policy is on immigration. It's the #1 issue on the doorstep: illegal migration and legal migration. We saw back in 2010, I think legal migration was around 200,000 a year. And now it's currently at about 700,000, 600,000 net over the last 2 years for each year. So the government has failed on that, and people, quite frankly, up and down the country and in places like Ashfield, are absolutely fed up with being promised one thing and something else being delivered.
Lee Anderson, what is Reform's plan to stop the boats crossing the Channel?
Well, I mean, Nigel said it this morning. Richard Tice has been very, very clear on it. I've done some media early today. You know, and when I was a Conservative Member of Parliament, I was quite vocal on this subject in the House of Commons, and it's quite simple. It's turnbacks, it's pushbacks, and if the illegal migrants actually slip through the net and get here to the beaches in Dover and on Kent, then just scoop them up, you know, look after them for a few hours and take them back to France.
Right.
It needs political will.
Yes.
It needs courage. It needs strong leadership. And I'm sorry, nobody in Parliament seems to have that.
Right. I mean, Lee Anderson, we looked into this a few months ago when Richard Tice was on the programme, and there are legal problems with it. Otherwise, it would have been done before. As you say, and we heard from Nigel Farage, you're expecting France to take asylum seekers back, or people making that crossing in small boats. If it was that simple, it would have happened. It can't.
Well, look, I mean, the French, we know the French Navy are actively escorting these boats to the halfway point and passing them over to the RNLI. And I say send them back. And if it causes any sort of incident, or people are bothered about our international reputation or breaking any international laws, and so be it.
Really? So you're prepared? Well, hang on, Lee. You're prepared to break the law. You're prepared.
There is nobody in Ashfield lying awake at night worrying about international laws or treaties.
All right,
they want this problem stopped straight away.
I understand. So you are prepared to break the law if it's maritime law, and perhaps to have some sort of conflict with our neighbours in France.
Conflict with France?
Well, I just mean, I don't mean armed conflict. I mean just a battle in terms of over the law.
It's the French Navy that's causing this conflict. They should not be escorting these boats to the halfway point in the Channel and dumping them to us. They've got a lot to answer for.
Right, and if the policy is so appealing, were you surprised that Natalie Elphicke, the MP for Dover, which is certainly at the sort of front line, if you like, when it comes to this issue, chose to defect to Labour and not to Reform?
Well, I mean, that's up to Natalie. I mean, I was surprised that she made the move. She has been quite vocal on the subject, but, you know, they're welcome to her at the end of the day. I mean, as an MP for Dover, yes, she's been vocal, but she's achieved very, very little. Look, and there is another solution to the illegal migrant, and this is going to probably get me into some sort of hot water again with you lot in the media. And I said this to a previous Home Secretary, I won't say which one, but if some of these migrants do land on the beaches, let's take them to a remote Scottish island somewhere, Outer Hebrides, where nobody lives, give them the building materials, let them set their own camps up, and I'm sure they'll be safe and free from persecution in war-torn France.
Right, well, that is just inflammatory rhetoric. I mean, we don't know. Scottish island, to take migrant to a Scottish island. All right, we'll just park that just for the moment. I mean, Nigel Farage is the best-known sort of potential candidate Reform has, and he isn't even standing. You must be disappointed.
No, I'm absolutely delighted. And I'll tell you why I'm delighted, is because if Nigel was standing, he would have to spend the majority of his time in his own seat campaigning and attending hustings. Now we can come to places like Ashfield, which he is doing later on this week, and help me retain my seat.
All right, Lee Anderson, we have Mel Stride and Steve Reid in the studio. Mel Stride, listening to what Lee Anderson said about the policy of the government in terms of its utter, complete failure.
So on illegal migration. I don't accept that what we should be doing is invading France's territorial waters in the way that Leander said. Well, it's tantamount to that. It's about returning people. It wouldn't be with certainly wouldn't be with their agreement, would it, Lee? To get into that kind of friction with France would mean that the 26,000 illegal crossings that have been prevented by cooperating with the French would then, presumably, that cooperation would be completely ripped asunder. The way that we stop the illegal crossings is by smashing the model that the criminal gangs that are operating this operate. And that is to have a deterrence, which is where the Rwanda policy comes in.
No flights are taking off during this campaign. We'll never be able to test the policy.
We have the aeroplanes ready, we have the airfields ready, we have the people doing the processing. We are ready to go. The Prime Minister made it very clear when the legislation went through, this is important, Joe, that this would happen within about 10 to 12 weeks. So this will be happening around July time. Those flights will be taking off to Rwanda. We've seen it with Albania.
Hang on, Lee, just because I've only got a few seconds. Lee Anderson, if those flights take off, will you deem the policy a success?
Well, look, I mean, I've got the greatest respect for Mel, but I think he's been, a little bit dishonest here. The reason that Rishi Sunak has called this election, he knows full well that these flights will not be going off in the summer, and thousands of young men will cross the channel.
All right, Lee Anderson, we have to stop it there, unfortunately, because we're at the end of the programme, but from all of us here, bye-bye.